Hi everyone, it is Kendall here, and what I have for you today is block number 20 of our Grandma's Kitchen Quilt Along, which is hosted by Pat Sloan over at her website, ilovetomakequilts.com. If you haven't done so already, jump over to Pat's website, download this week's free pattern, come back here, and I'll show you how I do it. We begin where we begin almost every week, as sometimes I change it, with all of our pieces cut out as per Pat's wonderful free pattern. We are going to start by making half square triangles, which is also where we generally tend to start every week. And for that, we will take our 4 light fabrics, our 2 medium fabrics, and our 2 dark fabrics. These are 3-inch squares. We're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner in one direction on the back of all of our light fabric squares. We'll then match these up right sides together with our medium and dark fabrics and take those to the machine and stitch 1/4 inch on each side of our drawn line. I then like to give it a press first to set those stitches and ease any tension that may have been caused by sewing across the bias. We can then cut these in half on that drawn line, and we need to press these in a specific way. We are going to, and do not follow how I lay them out to begin with in just a moment. We need to press these in opposing directions because our half square triangles are going to sit next to each other. So we will have 4 of each, medium and dark. Now, originally I set these all out the same, as if we are going to press 3 towards the medium fabric, 3 towards the dark fabric, and 1 of each towards the light, but we need to do opposites. So with the dark fabric, I will press 3 towards the darker of the 2 fabric and 1 towards that light fabric. On the medium ones, we will press 3 towards the light fabric and 1 towards the medium fabric, which you will see me do throughout this next section. And here is where I realized my error, and I will press, as I said, 3 of these medium ones towards that light fabric and just 1 of them towards the medium. Sorry about all the confusion with the way that we're pressing these, but it may seem inconsequential, but it is actually quite helpful when we come to piecing everything together. To trim these down, as always, because we are trimming to less than 3.5 inches, I do like to bring in this makeshift block lock. To make this, all I did was put 3 layers of painter's tape along the diagonal of my 3.5 inch Creative Grids square ruler. We can use that painter's tape edge to butt up against our seam allowance and make sure that we are trimming some fabric away from 2 of those sides. Rotate the whole thing around with 1 foul swoop, and we're able to slide that ruler down and trim the final 2 sides. Just again, butt that painter's tape edge up against that seam allowance and trim away 2 sides. Rotate everything around with 1 big swoop and it will all hold together. Slide the ruler down, line up your 2.5 inches on those freshly cut sides and trim the final 2. I just find this easier when I'm working with smaller pieces, and you'll notice as I trim these down that we have pieces going in different directions, which is what we want. We should have 3 of these pressed to the light, 1 to the medium, and the other one 3 pressed to the dark and 1 to the light. We are now going to take the 3 half square triangle units that were pressed in the opposite directions, and you'll see that in a moment, and we need to sew these in pairs. We're going to sew 2 with the dark on the left hand side and 1 with the dark on the right hand side, and because of our pressing that we did before, you'll see here that this intersection at the peak of the units does nest nicely. After we've sewn all 3 of these units together, remembering we do 2 with the dark on the left and 1 with the dark on the right, we will press these seams open. We are now ready to lay this middle section of our block out and pay careful attention to the actual diagram in the pattern, and we are creating a checkerboard, and I really messed things up, which is why this is being fast forwarded so quickly. We need to put 4 of our medium fabric squares to the side because we need those for the sashing on the block, and then everything else gets pulled in and laid out as per our pattern. I miscut and had to quickly do 1 extra square, as you saw just there, and finally we have it laid out as per the pattern. I'm going to just sew everything together in rows here, and starting at the top, and once again, because of the way we pressed our pieces, those 2 flying geese type units at the top, that intersection in the center there will nest. Keeping a good track of where you're up to with everything, just sew all your units in pairs down in the rows, and then once you're done, you can just sit everything back. I don't actually press anything just yet until I come to the final row construction so that I can see which way my seam allowances want to go. Okay, hopefully you were able to follow along there. You just place your pieces back, trying to maintain that checkerboard. Now we coming to where we might need to press a few things. So on that 3rd row, you would have seen that I pressed away from the half square triangles on both sides. The top row, I'm going to press that center seam open. Now to get these pieces to nest once we sew our rows together, I pressed the 2nd row opposite, so out towards the edges as opposed to in towards the center. Hopefully that makes sense. Then when it comes to our bottom row, we may need to clip just to make sure that we're getting everything the way that we want it, but we'll have a look at that when we get the pressing mat. So I did press out toward the edges on this 2nd row, and I pressed the center seam open to match with the row above. Now for these intersections that are in the middle of our half square triangle units, I am just going to clip into the seam allowance and press it over to the right on one side and to the left on the other. And that's just to allow those intersections to nest with our row below when we come to sew this across. You don't have to do this. You can press all of your seam allowances open. This is just how I was constructing this one. I do like to have all of those nesting intersections, as you are aware, and because I've clipped in and shifted this, I will also be able to spin these intersections, spreading the bulk further around the block, and I think that's what I do. no change to this third row, where we will press in towards those solid squares on the left and right hand side, and I will press that center seam open once again just to remain consistent down the block. When we come to do row 4, we will just press out towards those solid squares, and the horizontal seam, all of our intersections will nest. With these top 2 rows of our unit, because that second row is all just solid squares, we are able to just press towards that solid row. In between rows 3 and 4, however, we have some bulk with our half square triangles and our flying geese unit that's down the bottom. So I'm going to spin some of these intersections. I'm going to give it some heat first to make it a little bit easier, and then I'm going to open this up, and as you can see, we will spin our right hand side here in a clockwise direction, just opening up that seam allowance and removing any of the stitches that are still in there. We will press that into place going in that clockwise direction. We can then just go over to our other side here, and this will go in an anti-clockwise direction, just moving those seam allowances apart once again and removing any of the stubborn stitches from the inside. You will see that that leaves all of this middle section pointing towards that flying geese unit, which is absolutely fine, as we don't have any bulky intersections of half square triangles or anything to deal with there. We can then come to sewing our very last horizontal seam for this central unit after giving it one last quick press, and all of those intersections should now nest nicely. And after we've sewn that final horizontal seam for this unit, we can once again just press up towards that second row, as all of those squares are solid and we won't actually create that much extra bulk. We'll now bring in our remaining light pieces, which go as a sashing around this block, so 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, and then we have our 4 remaining medium squares to go in each corner. This once again is an uneven 9 patch, with all of our components being different sizes, but there are 9 of them. So 9 patch construction rules can apply, and we'll start by doing all of our vertical seams and then our horizontal seams. In all instances, when doing this sashing, we will press towards the light fabric. So on the sides there where we're attaching it to our central unit, the sashing will be pressed out. Therefore, what we need to do on our top and bottom row is press in towards that sashing to get those corner intersections to nest. Once we've sewn the top and the bottom row on, we can just press out towards those sashings as well, and our block for this week will be done. As with every Block Wednesday pattern, you do get a suggested layout to use that week's block, and as you can see from this week, Pat is pairing it with our block from week 13, and here is what that looks like with my colorations. All I did was change the cornerstones of our original block to the same color as our week 13 block, and it actually looks really effective in these two colors.